We have with us senior advocate Percival Billimoria, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us today. I would like to start the session by first knowing what are your insights about the entire exhibition and views of His Holiness Yug Bhushan Suriji Maharaj.
I think last year when I'd seen the exhibition, it was very impressive, both in terms of the how elaborate it was and also the level of knowledge of the people who had put it together. I think this time it's really excelled itself. It's much larger, for one thing, and it's done so meticulously, and it's really quite amazing. And I can only commend them.
How far do you think that the principles, the discussion, and the deliberation that took place today is enforceable or can be incorporated in modern day governance and our legal system? And what can be the best mechanism to do so?
There are two aspects to this. One is from the constitutional perspective. It's important to also mix knowledge of the constitution with history of what happened at that time. And I think today's discussion was all about the First Amendment to the Constitution and the nature of the polity. And my view was always that there is a difference between statesmen who created the Constitution, scholars who created the Constitution, a part of the assembly. They all had the good of the country at heart, and politicians, because politicians by nature, their interest is more in their politics of the day. And I think the First Amendment was a very pitiful example, and this is one of the reasons why I grew up in school in Bombay saying Chacha Nehru. But when it comes to studying history and constitutional law, the First Amendment was a disgrace. I don't have any other word for that, because we've always prided ourselves, we still do, we always prided ourselves in saying that there are, there's the executive wing, there's the legislature, and then there's a judiciary. And the judiciary has the right to review. That's the only one singular difference between, otherwise all operate in their own spheres. And this is the bedrock of constitutional principles. And the First Amendment, the very First Amendment, brought in a Schedule 9, which listed a lot of laws which cannot be subject to review. So the role of the court, which is very important under the Constitution, was dispensed with. And I think Guruji also, agreed with me there. And I think he also said that it's unfortunate. And, I'm trying to recall the exact term he used, but as far as I'm concerned, I think that was one of the very big letdowns.
There were two very important aspects that were discussed again. One of which was the nation-state dichotomy.
Yes.
Was there that we have always been a nation, but the concept of being a state was imposed. So how do you disintegrate both of it, and how do you see both of them? And if you relate it to our civilizational values, how do you think it has affected our interest at global level?
So, you can say that, yes, when we became independent, we became a state. And you are also very right in saying that we've always been a nation because, for example, Guruji always talks about the Shastras and what is in the Shastras. And you'll be surprised to find, things like secularism. It's there in our Shastras. Only thing, the modern day definition of what it exactly means would differ depending on the typical milieu that we are in. But the concept has always been founded in our Shastras. So to that extent, I think 1947 saw us move from being a nation to becoming a state. Boundaries were drawn, there was a partition, and I know people who still, suffer from the hangover of that period because it was a very traumatic period. And we got ourselves a new constitution, and we have what is known as the doctrine of eclipse. So I think when the constitution came about in 1950, that is the first time that we got rights. So individual citizen is no longer just an Indian, but it's an Indian which has been granted constitutional rights. And there was a what we call as a doctrine of eclipse, which means that when the constitution is enacted, any previous law which is contrary to or inconsistent with fundamental rights is invalid. And similarly, the parliament cannot enact a law going forward which militates against fundamental rights. So I think that was a huge development, and it gave us, the confidence to move ahead as a nation state. And then, unfortunately, after a year, we had this little amendment where I think Parliament said that, okay, there are certain laws where we will not allow courts to do a review or a chat. I can understand the rationale, which is that there were agrarian reforms which were the need of the hour at that time, and there were conflicting decisions. Sometimes you have one state giving a decision which is contrary to the other state, and so therefore, that's the nature of democracy, right? I mean, India is known as a chaotic democracy, and that's what happened. And then Chacha Nehru had a very simple solution: amend the constitution and say anything in the ninth schedule the courts will be given to go by, which is objectionable considering that the bedrock of the principles of constitutional law is that there is the executive, the judiciary, and the legislature, and the judiciary does have a right to review the any law enacted from the lens of whether it violates fundamental rights or not.
Would want to come to my next question, which is essentially related to the concepts of Arthashastra, Niti Shastra. So we have been talking about that we always had a system of governance in place. If we talk about our ancient system of governance, if we talk about our ancient way of working, we had a lot of virtue system of governance, of legal system in place.
Right.
So do you say it is adequately reflected in the modern constitution, or we need some proactive steps from both judiciary and the legislature to have it in the best sense?
I would say it's far removed because, so remember one thing, our constitution is very elaborate. Somebody today made, I think it was Daras Kambata who made the point that in the US, it's just 4 to 7 is just probably one page or something. And so to have such an elaborate constitution has its own pluses and minuses. Our constitution was crafted by the framers of the Constituent Assembly as a mishmash of many constitutions across the world. They studied many models and they adapted something from here and something from there and put it together. And I think they've done a fine job. But the system of governance that we had does not find a place in the constitution, and also the morality. So, right now you have a situation where constitution is going to look at this notion of constitutional morality. What exactly is that? And when you talk about ancient times, for example, the what we have here is flowing from the principle Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, right? And that essentially means not just human beings, but all creatures, all sentient beings. So it's always been, so for example, there's a very sad situation that is developing right now. The media has somehow convinced people that they've actually spooked people, right, about that dogs kill children. That's nonsense, right? It's complete nonsense. And I have people telling me that, my gosh, so look at the number of automobile deaths and how are you going to do away with automobiles? And I said, listen, that's not a fair comparison because you're talking about human lives. And if indeed that has happened, you can say that it is a probably a minuscule percentage for which the greater body of dogs cannot be held responsible. There is, of course, a solution, which is that we need to ensure sterilization. See, it is nobody's case that the dog which is sterilized, any creature which is sterilized, can still reproduce. I don't think anyone can make that case, right? So the answer lies in getting to the root of the issue, ensuring that the corruption that is there in that sector is rooted out, ensuring that the sterilization capacity is not underfunded and we are not operating below capacity. And instead of that, I think now our society is moving towards violence towards these creatures. And, this is where, the doctrine of locus parenti comes in, because they are voiceless. They need people like us to speak up for them. And, very clearly, I mean, if someone says Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, right? I mean, if you're following that line, you have absolutely no idea what you're talking about if you are at the same time cruel to innocent creatures, or in fact acting in a manner that destroys our environment. And that morality has changed.
I would want to come to my last question, which is related to the ancient wisdom as such. Do you think that we are moving towards reconnecting with our ancient wisdom and truly getting independent from our colonial mindset? And how do you think that we should, in our legal systems, in our modern day governance, take proactive steps? What should those proactive steps be in order to, getting away from that colonial mindset?
So there is no doubt that there is a colonial mindset that is still there as a hangover. And I'll give you a very simple example of this. So if your child, is admitted into Oxford or Harvard, then, you would go around very happy talking about it. That's a colonial mindset. But somebody who gets into an Indian university, the parents are not going to tom-tom that, right? And this fact actually was pointed out by a Nigerian lawyer, and he said that, we in Nigeria, and then I think that applies equally to us, we have to step out of the colonial mindset. And this is a very good example of what exactly is a colonial mindset. And I'm afraid that it will take us a couple of more generations to do that.
Thank you for joining us
Thank
in
you.
the interview. Thank you so much.